from the Pentagon. Breaking news here as well. Fresh questions about Pete Hegseth's tenure as the country's Secretary of Defense. A former aide to Hegseth now describing the last 30 days this way as a, quote, month from hell. 30 days that included a purge of top officials, a top secret briefing for the world's richest man, who also happens to be a defense contractor. That meeting was canceled at the last minute. A website dedicated to Jackie Robinson scrubbed over DEI concerns, and not one, but two previously unfathomable national security breaches. News breaking over the weekend, first reported by the New York Times, that Hegseth shared information about airstrikes in Yemen on March 15th in a group chat on Signal that included his wife, it included his brother, and his personal attorney. His wife, a former Fox News producer, is not a Defense Department employee. And while Hegseth has hired his brother and attorney, Tim Parlatore, for roles at DOD, the New York Times says this, quote, it is not clear why either would need to know about upcoming military strikes aimed at the Houthis in Yemen. If this story sounds familiar, that's because Hegseth shares what the New York Times calls, quote, essentially the same attack plans on a separate Signal group chat that included Atlantic editor Jeffrey Goldberg on the very same day. Sources tell NBC News that 13 people, including his wife, were on this particular separate group chat and that Hegseth was using his personal phone. This morning, Hegseth dismissed the reporting about him disclosing attack plans to his wife and others on an unsecured messaging app as a, quote, hit piece. The White House defended him, the press secretary saying, quote, no classified information has been shared, end quote. The New York Times reports that what Hegseth shared on the chat was, quote, essentially the same attack plans that were in the group chat started by National Security Advisor Mike Waltz, including the schedules of the fighter jets launching the strikes. When that story broke last month, national security experts and officials said that it was incredibly hard to believe that those attack plans would not be classified. And news that the second Signal chat is just the latest in a string of controversies at the Pentagon right now. There's Jeffrey Goldberg revealing that Hegseth texted him war plans not even a month ago. Since then, we've learned that Hegseth has been taking his wife to meetings with foreign officials where sensitive information has come up, and that the Pentagon had arranged a briefing on potential war plans with China for Elon Musk, who has a lot of business in China and is a top defense contractor. On Friday, Hegseth fired 3 of his closest aides and advisors. All that has happened in the last 30 days. It's why the call is now coming from inside the House. A once loyal Hegseth aide calling for Trump to remove Hegseth. Former Pentagon spokesperson John Elliott writes in Politico this, quote, the last month has been a full-blown meltdown at the Pentagon. It's becoming a real problem for the administration. The Pentagon focus is no longer on war fighting, but endless drama. Joining our conversation, NBC News national security correspondent Courtney Kube. Also joining us, Secretary Frank Kendall, former Secretary of the Air Force during the Biden administration. Mr. Secretary, I start with you and just your sense of the crises roiling the Pentagon.
Well, I think we've reached a point where the solution to this problem is getting pretty obvious now. There's a certain latitude with a new appointee when they come in, but Secretary Hegseth has pretty much demonstrated that he's really not up to the job that he has. And we're talking about that right now instead of other things I'm sure the president would rather we be talking about. And there's a point for any political appointee when you become an embarrassment to the administration and a distraction from higher priorities, certainly, that it's time for you to go. And it would appear that we're there now. President Trump may not have reached that conclusion yet, but it's hard to come to any other conclusion.
Courtney, I know we're so many years post-irony and that irony is dead and buried, but the idea that the Trump administration and the Pentagon and the national security apparatus are ensnared in an all-encompassing, easily understandable debacle about disclosing classified information on personal phones and personal messaging apps is unbelievable. And the notion that Trump is tolerant to what feel like constant lapses in judgment from Pete Hegseth needs to be explained to me by somebody like you. How are we here?
I have to say, Nicole, when you ran through all of that in the intro in the last 30 days, I remember why I am so exhausted, because there has been so much that's been backed in the past month, starting with the Atlantic story, the first Signal chat. Remember at the time, the most grievous error that the administration saw was the fact that a journalist, Jeffrey Goldberg, was added to that chat. And that sort of overshadowed the fact that Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth texted information on that chat that, no matter what the Pentagon says about it not being classified, was clearly information about an upcoming military operation, an imminent military operation with manned aircraft, manned ships, people who would be in direct danger if that information got out, and how potentially dangerous that was. Well, now fast forward, we now know it's the second beat to this story is the fact that Secretary Hegseth himself created another Signal chat where he also shared information of a similar dangerous nature to U.S. men and women in uniform. But in this case, the information wasn't going to cabinet officials. It wasn't going to senior people in the Trump administration. In fact, it was going to relatives. His brother, who does work here in the Pentagon, but he has a role that deals with Department of Homeland Security here and Homeland Defense. His wife, she has no role here at the Pentagon. We have asked multiple times if she has a clearance and never gotten a response. And to his private attorney, as you mentioned, who also is now here in some capacity in the Navy Reserves. But again, the key to this was the information that was provided here. Now, according to the Atlantic text chat, the first thing that Secretary Hegseth texted was that the mission is a go. As soon as the mission is a go, the information changes to a whole new set of classification. Essentially, it is on a need-to-know basis that information would go out. And that is because once it's a go, ships are moving, aircraft are getting ready to start launching, and there, again, men and women's lives could be at stake. And only the people who would really need to know the specifics of the launch plan, of the times, of when the bombs would be dropping, only they would have access to that. And at this point, Nicole, it makes no sense why relatives of the Secretary of Defense would need to know. It looks on its surface that he was just bragging about the operation that was about to be underway. And a new development also late last week, it's part of this an investigation that's here at the Pentagon looking into who's providing this information. Well, 3 of his closest advisors now have been escorted out of the building. And the only reason that we've gotten here from the Department of Defense is that it's as part of this leak investigation. Then today, when he was Secretary Hegseth at the Easter egg roll at the White House, when he was asked about why they were fired or why they were moved from their jobs, he specifically called them leakers. Nicole, the amount of events that are occurring here at the Pentagon every day and the dramatic lack of information the public is getting about them is something I've never seen here before.